So, tragedy has been avoided, and it's really, really great. But it brings up a topic that needs to be discussed. There's a lot of misinformation out there about guns and gun violence and school shootings and things like that. But let me just tell you what happened. This wasn't in the news. It's probably because something was prevented. All right. Students tackle gunman at California high school, police say. All right. This is from ABC News. Students at a California high school tackled a gunman and managed to take his weapon from him after he brandished it at the school, police said. La Habra High School went on lockdown Tuesday morning after a student yielded a 22 caliber gun in the school, according to a statement from La Habra police. However, two freshmen in the class ran up to him, wrestled him, and got the weapon out of his hands, Sergeant Jose Rocha told ABC News on Wednesday. It was a student who tackled him, Rocha said. The high school, located in Orange County, later lifted the lockdown. All students were safe. According to the school, police said a student was detained and a weapon was recovered at the scene. It was not immediately clear if the student was trying to show off the handgun or sell it. However, it was not loaded, according to police. Rocha said the student, who was not named, was placed into a juvenile detention center. Calls to the district attorney's office on whether the student is facing charges were not returned. Okay. So, before I get into some gun history and some things like that, gun statistics, and let me just say this. If he was trying to sell it, let me say this. If he was trying to show it off, he's an idiot. If he was trying to sell it, he's an idiot. Okay, because first of all, I'm not saying what he did was okay. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is this. If you are going to do these things, let's just play out the scenario that he just wanted to show it off. There are many other places you could go to show it off and you are not in public. You could have kept it at your home. You could have gone to the bathroom where you can have a little more privacy, but I think they were in a classroom or they were just outside. So if he was trying to show it off, it was stupid. And selling it, same thing. He was like that's just stupid. But here's what I wanted to get into. Here's what matters. As I've mentioned before, we today look at how can I put this? We look at school shootings and we see them as being worse than they actually are. And let me just explain something here. So, school shootings have been happening in the United States. The first one, and I'm getting this stuff from K12academics.com. All right. So just listen to this. I'm just gonna name a few. In the 1700s, the earliest known United States shooting to happen on school property was the Pontiac Rebellion's school massacre on July 26, 1764, where 4 Lenape American Indians entered the schoolhouse near present-day Greencastle, Pennsylvania, shot and killed schoolmaster Enoch Brown, and killed 9 or 10 children. Reports vary. Only 2 children survived. Now that's pretty gruesome right there, okay? 1800s, November 2nd, 1853, Louisville, Kentucky. A student, Matthew Ward, brought bought a self-cocking pistol in the morning, went to school, and killed schoolmaster Mr. Butler for excessively punishing his brother the day before. Even though he shot the schoolmaster point blank in front of his classmates, he was acquitted. In April 30th, 1866, editorial in the New York Times argued against students carrying pistols, citing pistols being dropped on the floor at balls or being exploded in very inconvenient ways. A boy of 12 has his pantaloons made with a pistol pocket. And this at a boarding school filled with boys who we suppose do or wish to do the same thing. We would advise parents to look into it and learn whether shooting is to be part of a scholastic course, which may be practiced on their boys, or else we advise them to see that their own boys are properly armed with the most approved and deadly pistol, that there may be an equal chance at least of their shooting as of being shot. Now that's kind of an interesting thought to think about. June 8th, 1867, New York City, at public school number 18, a 13-year-old lad brought a pistol loaded and capped without the knowledge of his parents or school teachers and shot and injured a fellow classmate. December 22nd, 1868, Chattanooga, Tennessee. A boy who refused to be whipped and left school returned with his brother and a friend the next day to seek revenge on his teacher. Not finding the teacher at the school, they continued to his house, where a gun battle rang out, leaving 3 dead. Only the brother survived. March 9th, 1873, Salisbury, Maryland. After school, as Miss Shockley was walking with 4 small children, she was approached by a Mr. Hall and shot. The schoolmaster ran out, but she was dead instantly. Hall threw himself under a train that night. Now, you see where I'm going with this. There's a long list. There's a long list here. But here's what I want you to understand. Okay, so this just gives you, and you can look up these events. These are real events. I'm not making these up. These are school shootings aren't new. We need to understand that. So let's add that into our head. Okay, because we tend to think I think I've said this in an earlier episode that Christians, especially, I can't speak for like white evangelicals, but I do know that in black churches we have a belief and we have a suspicion that school shootings, that we have this belief that school shootings were happened because prayer was taken out of schools, and that's just historically stupid. It's historically stupid. Why? So prayer was taken out in 1962. So it's been 57 years since prayer was taken out of schools. Okay, but school shootings have been going on much longer than that. So it has nothing to do with prayer in schools. That's just, I gotta say this. Let me say this. Do I think we would benefit from praying in school? I don't know, and I can go into a whole other episode on that. But that's a really long tangent, and I won't be able to come back and cover my other topics. But I mean, we just have to think. These school shootings are not, they're just not new. And I remember talking to this one girl, and somehow we got into a conversation about firearms and firearm safety. Because she was talking about a story of something that happened at a gun range, and then somehow we got to school shootings, and pretty much I just kind of asked her. I was like, I don't think I've ever asked anyone this, But I said, how? I was like, do you think, first I asked her, do you think it's possible to stop school shootings? She said yes. And then she asked me, and I said no. And then I asked her, I was like, okay, so you think we could? And she said yes. And I said, okay, how would we do that? And she said, I really don't know. She was saying that she was trying to be optimistic. And she was saying, she was just saying that I think that we'll figure it out. And I disagree with her. I don't think school shootings are going to go anywhere. But we have to take into consideration, the left always talks about gun violence and stuff like that. Now, there is a mental health problem in the United States. 60%, and this is according to Pew Research, so suicides accounted for 6 in 10 U.S. gun deaths in 2017. 60%. So this idea of, we're just all going to die from mass shootings and school shootings and people are just going to be pulling guns on us. That's absolutely ridiculous. It really is. It's a mental health problem. I talk about my American Dad example all the time, but it's so true. The dad he's in the kitchen and he's cleaning his gun, and the daughter walks in and she says, "Guns kill people," and he says, "Okay." He takes the gun and he sets it on the table, and he looks at the gun, points at it, and says, "Kill someone." And then he looks at his daughter and says, "Your point is invalid." It's not the tool. It's the person behind the tool. People talk about, especially Beto O'Rourke, or I should say, Robert Francis O'Rourke, because Beto is just a made up thing that he uses to pander. But we just have to understand. He was talking. That's where I was going with that. He was talking about weapons of war. And he was like, because he was in a church, and some guy was talking about the Second Amendment and his interpretation of it, and then Beto gave a pretty garbage answer. He gave a pretty garbage answer that really was just, it was a garbage answer for his case, saying, okay, we're gonna take your guns. And he said, he started talking about weapons of war. And you just need to be knowledgeable and just understand all guns are weapons of war. You can use practically anything as a weapon. You can use a book as a weapon. You can use a magazine as a weapon. A knife is a weapon. In 2018, there were, according to Statista.com, there were 1,515 murder victims from knives or cutting instruments. That's pretty huge. Now that's small compared to the number by handguns, which was 6,603. And then there are other guns involved. So that number is bigger. But we just listen, just be knowledgeable about this. Don't be afraid of guns. Don't be afraid of guns. Don't be afraid of gun culture. Educate yourself. You have to understand this stuff just isn't new. Remember, you have to understand the age and the time that we live in. We live in the age of social media. At this time, we experience events, and then they pass very quickly. To have a story be in the news for 24 hours, has to be huge. because news was relatively slow back then because things didn't happen. There was no social media, no internet, stories. There'd be like the same story for a week or a few weeks with rebuttals and stuff like that and corrections and, the like. Now, stories are happening hours. You realize stories are published all the time while you're sleeping, while you're awake, while you're eating, while you're on the toilet, while you're in the shower, while you're at work. Stories come out all the time, and there's always something new. So when we live in the age of speed and, being in the microwave generation and wanting to, wanting to just blow everything up, which is what social media does. Social media enlarges issues. People. It's like this. What is social media for? That's another question. I may just do a whole episode on that. But my question is, what is social media for? People use social media to post. They use it to express themselves. They use it to make their lives look really good. Because remember, for the most part, people's lives are pretty drab and boring. It's the same thing every single day. It's just slight variation. So you have those problems. And so social media is it's used to show a certain aspect and to present a certain narrative. So when we hear things about, another school shooting happened. And here's the thing, I'm not downplaying school shootings at all. It's sad, it's horrible. But yet I'm putting it into context. The likelihood of you dying from a school shooting is very unlikely. It's very unlikely. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but just statistically, you really have no reason to fear a school shooting. Now, you should be prepared for one. You should always have, an emergency, just keep your wits about you. Just be aware who's who, who's coming in the door, who's leaving the door. Just be aware. But you don't need to be fearful. I know this one guy. He tells me he's terrified. And he said ever since Parkland, ever since the Parkland school shooting, he said he's been terrified. And I'm like, man, you can't live like that. You can't live in fear. Because instead of going to school and you learn, you go to school and you are on edge. You can't relax. You can't enjoy yourself. You can't laugh. You can't learn. You can't network. You can't do anything because you're so afraid of someone just whipping out a gun. And I was like, dude, it's just probably not going to happen. But he's still afraid, and there are others who aren't as bad as him in terms of fear. But just, I'm so glad this incident in La Habra didn't go worse. Obviously he wasn't gonna do anything to kill. But still. Just I would just say this, just arm yourself with knowledge. That's what's important here, because the mainstream media is out of control, and they push these narratives, and sometimes you don't know what to believe. Being a communications major, sometimes we talk about ethics and the ethics of media. And one question that can come up often is the media responsible for presenting the truth? And most people will say yes, some will say no. The way I view it is, it's up to people to educate. It's up to people to educate themselves. Your education and your learning and your growth is on you. Research. Look up data, look up statistics, look up terminology. People, they say assault rifle. If you went up to 100 people and you asked them what is an assault rifle, they wouldn't be able to tell you, because an assault rifle it's a made up term. It's a made up term. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. A lot of people just here's the thing concerning guns. It's one of those things where and obviously I'm kind of exaggerating here, but I think they are extremes. Either you understand guns and you're really knowledgeable about guns, or you're just really ignorant concerning guns. And I think that's why, there's kind of this push and people just believing, we're going to get rid of all, semi-automatics, which is most guns. So, just arm yourself with knowledge and just be aware. Okay. So now that I've debunked the whole school shooting thing, let's move on. Okay, so TMZ. TMZ. I don't think TMZ was the first on this story, but here's something that happened. So there was a boxer Patrick Day, who I've never heard of before, except like maybe a few days ago. He dies from brain injuries at 27 after brutal knockout loss. This kind of goes back to my episode on whether boxing should be banned. And it shouldn't. It absolutely shouldn't. Boxer Patrick Day died Wednesday from brain injuries sustained during a violent knockout loss on Saturday, his team announced. Day was only 27. I think about these things, man. 27. I'm 20. In 5 months, I'm gonna be celebrating my 21st birthday. 27's not that far. It really isn't. I mean, he's dead, and it's just horrible. It's really unfortunate. Day 17, who was 17-4-1. And in case you don't know what that means 17 wins, 4 losses, and 1 draw, or a tie. Day was knocked down 3 times, once in the 4th, again in the 8th, and finally in the 10th, by 21-year-old rising star Charles Conwell during Saturday's fight at the Wintrust Arena in Chicago. The final knockdown was particularly brutal. Day's head bounced off the canvas and the ref immediately stopped the fight. Medical personnel rushed into the ring. Day was taken out of the ring in a stretcher and loaded into an ambulance which transported him to a nearby hospital. Day suffered a seizure after the fight and fell into a coma. He later underwent emergency brain surgery. Jesus. Day fought for days but ultimately succumbed to the traumatic brain injury he suffered during the fight and was pronounced dead on Wednesday. He was surrounded by close friends, family, and members of his boxing team. Day's promoter issued a statement praising the fighter as a champion in and out of the ring. He was a son, brother, and a good friend to many. Pat's kindness, positivity, and generosity of spirit made a lasting impression with everyone he met. Patrick Day didn't need to box. He came from a good family. He was smart, educated, had good values, and had other avenues available to him to earn a living. He chose to box knowing the inherent risks that every fighter faces when he or she walks into a boxing ring. Boxing is what Pat loved to do. It's how he inspired people, and it was something that made him feel alive. You know, I say this. I'd never believed people should do what makes them happy. I believe happiness is an overrated virtue. I guess if you could say, I don't even know if it would be a virtue. I don't think it's a virtue in my opinion. But happiness to me is overrated. I believe people should do what makes them great. So this is what he loved to do, and he lost his life. Now, given there are many, 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 many boxers around the world. And, boxers, have been around for a very long time. And, the sport, in my opinion, it's not really going to go anywhere. People, we like violence. We like two people going at it, or two parties going at it, and then one comes out victorious and the other one is defeated. We like that. So I really don't think boxing is in any danger. But I do say this. People who box, I'll say this. I remember after the episode where I talked about banning boxing, I got some questions, and I remember talking to my sister about boxing. And she said, I asked her, and I already suspected the answer, but I asked her, I was like, would you let your son box? And she said no. I said, would you let him play football? She said no. And I thought to myself, would I let my son be a boxer? And I don't know. Because here's the thing. It would be something where I would want him to explain to me why he wants to be a boxer, and why he doesn't want to do something else. And it would obviously be a family decision. Like, it wouldn't just be him coming to me. It would be him coming to me and my wife, his mother, and we would make the decision together. And I put it this way. If my wife said no, I wouldn't just immediately side with her because she's my wife. That's a stupid thing to do. Just to side with someone just because of their relationship. That's not really how you want to conduct yourself. You got to think things through. But I don't know if I would let my son box. I think what I would do, I would have him do the workouts and just test it out and just see, okay, son, can you handle the intensity and the workout that boxing is? Forget the contact. The contact is going to come later. But can you just handle the rigorousness of boxing? Because boxers are in tremendous shape. It is so hard. I mean, it is so tiring. So that would probably be my approach. And then I would go from there. But he, they said he knew the risks, which obviously you have to. But, it's sad. Patrick Day didn't need to box. He came from a good family. He was smart, educated, had good values, and had other avenues available to him to earn a living. Sometimes I understand when there are people who put their own life on the line for the sake of their loved ones. It's like this. If it was me, my wife, and my children, and I had no other means to support them, and someone said, you know what, you should be a boxer, 'Cause that way you could support your family. That would be my only way. That's the only way I would do it. Now, I might do boxing as a recreational activity, do it for the fitness, but actually, getting hit and stuff like that, I would only do it if my family if I was just in a desperate situation and I was like, I have to find a way to provide for my family. But that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case for Patrick Day. Good family, smart, educated, good values, other avenues available to him. I think it's, in life you take risks. And there are some where some just aren't necessarily worth it. Because here's what you have to understand about boxing. Boxing is a brutal sport. It's hard on the body. The body wasn't made to get hit, to get pummeled, to get hit in the face, to throw punches. That's not what the body can do it, but it wasn't made to do that. Our skeletal structure, muscular system, all of that, it wasn't made to do that activity. So he has this. He does this for a few years, and there's not too many who can do this professionally, and do that by itself. Boxing is a lot of work, and you really got to rise through the ranks, and it's hard because everyone wants to be at the top. Everyone wants to make those millions of dollars. Boxing to me isn't worth it because if you fail, it's not really like another sport. Because your body has just taken so much damage over time, you hit your 50s, you can barely talk. And it's just like, come on, man. And I'm not saying this is for everyone, but, boxing, to me, I would rather have my son do football than boxing. Football, no one is directly trying to hurt you. Boxing, the goal is, I hurt you. I try to hurt you as much as possible. And I'll put it this way. I maximize the pain I dish out, and I try to minimize the pain that I'm receiving. So you do all of this, and you do it for years and years. And you don't just have the you don't just have the match, you have practices and sparring and all of that, and that just builds up over time where you will get hit in the head, you will get hit in the chin, you will get hit in the throat, you'll get hit in the chest, you'll get hit in these vital areas directly with no padding on except for gloves. And I mean, these guys can hit. These guys pack some power. So, it's really unfortunate. Supposedly he did what he loved to do. And, it cost him his life. Now, I will say this. I think this is some good advice. I think before you go into anything, you need to think about everything. You need to weigh your options. You need to think about the pros. Think about the cons. Think about everything that is involved in the situation. How can I benefit? How will this hurt me? Think about all of those things before you do something. And then when you pick a path to go down the one that is best for you. Because at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you. Because you know what? People will do what is best for them. That's just how people are. And it's not an evil thing. It's just what we do. We have one life. We have one life on this earth. And you gotta maximize it. So if you do want to take a risk like this, or just take any risk, you know what? Go for it. And accept the consequences, good and bad, of what happened. That's really all I gotta say. Hope the family's okay. You know, they're gonna recover from this. But that's it. That's it. All right. Okay. So I think this goes back like a week ago, or maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks. I don't remember. But it concerns Ellen DeGeneres and George Bush. And it's really interesting because, you know, it was so stupid because there were leftists who were attacking Ellen, saying, how could you sit next to him? And I was just like, you people are garbage. I was like, here's the place that we've gotten to in society where it's like, if someone disagrees with you, you can't be civil. You can't be friends with someone who disagrees with you. That's the way we think in society now, and it's a horrible way to think. I say this often. My friends don't have the same views as I do. I'm in the minority, and I'm usually by myself in my group of friends, but we get along great. It's just horrible that, you know, we get to a point where, you know, you can't have civil discourse, or you can't just agree to disagree and still be friends. It's absolutely ridiculous. We've created, it's become bad tribalism. And to me, well, I'll just say this. I think there is good and bad tribalism. That's just me, but that's a whole different topic. But anyway, we're creating sides, and we're creating allies and enemies, and it's just horrible. It's not good for society. But I have to say this about Ellen. Do you remember when Ellen did not invite Trump? She said she wasn't going to invite Trump on her show. So, you know, we kind of talk about tolerance, and to me this kind of shows that she's a hypocrite. You know, I gotta be honest. People of all types, I would just see that. I'm gonna say this again. This is what I love about Joe Rogan's show. He has all types of people with various belief systems. But they all come on the show, and they can all be civil and have fun. My show, there are people who, you know, if you believe the complete opposite of me, I'm cool. And I'm going to be cool with you. We're going to laugh. We're going to have fun. We're going to talk. You know, we'll debate, and then, you know, we'll go get lunch afterwards. But this is ridiculous. But so I do consider Ellen to be a hypocrite. This is from Vanity Fair from May 2017. Despite her general resistance to getting political on her show, Ellen DeGeneres took a firm stance against Donald Trump on Friday when she told Matt Lauer that she would not hypothetically invite the president on as a guest. She said the same thing to Alec Baldwin just days before, but Lauer, unlike Baldwin also hit her up with a follow-up. Why? That's when DeGeneres, a genial comedian known for keeping things light, took her firmest anti-Trump stance. Because I'm not going to change his mind. He's against everything that I stand for. Here's the problem. She talked about, because I'm not going to change his mind. The goal isn't to change someone's mind. The goal is to talk. The goal is to connect. I guarantee you, if you sit down with someone who you don't like, you will find, hey, you know, we have more in common than I thought. It may just be one thing. You may think that you are complete opposites, But you'll find where it's like, hey, you know what? We have something in common. It's not about changing minds. Okay, he's against everything you stand for. You can still be civil. I know people who completely and totally fundamentally disagree with me. And they've let me know. But we can still have great conversations. We need to look at someone else who looks different than us and believes in something that we don't believe in and still accept them and still let them have their rights. It's just horrible. So when Ellen was, here's the thing. I didn't feel bad for Ellen. I didn't. Because this is what I thought of. I was like, wait a minute. You're talking about, being able to be friends and stuff like that and be cordial and stuff like that. But with Trump, you said, you were against it because you couldn't change his mind and, he was totally against everything that you stood for. It's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. We have to come to a point where we can go back. This is one thing I love about, ancient Greece and all of that, where they had schools of thought and, where they would just sit and talk and debate, and they could have civil discourse where it's like, okay, I think this about the world, or I think this about this topic, and it's like, okay, that's interesting. I don't agree. Here's what I think. But they could still just talk and be civil and not, lead it, have things go to physical fights or screaming matches. You can talk, be civil, and disagree. It's possible. And it just bothers me that we're at a point in society where we can't do it anymore. It's becoming less and less common. You can only be friends with people that agree with you. You can only hang out with people who are on the same side as you. It's ridiculous. Most of the people in my life are people who are liberals. Most are liberals. I do have my conservative circle, for sure. But most people, if I had to name 100 people that are in my circle, I would say 74. I'd say anywhere from 70 to 75 would identify as liberal. Most of the people I know in my life, and this is also partly because I'm in California, which is a major factor. But most of the people I know in my life are liberal. And it just bothers me, man. It bothers me. Elton John, from the Western Journal, Elton John offers support for Ellen after leftist backlash for a Bush photo, praises former president. I'm not trying to say I support Ellen. I think it's cool that she's friends with George Bush. I think he's a character. I think she's a character. I don't think she's funny at all. But, I think it's kind of cool to be like, oh, wow. When I saw the picture, I was like, oh, they're friends? That's kind of cool. But we have to get to a place, man, where we got to get back to being civil. Because the path we're headed down is not one of positivity. It's just painful, and it's going to be negative, and it's going to be harsh, and it's going to be crass and all of that, and it's not good. It's not good. We have to come together as a society. It's okay for us to be different. Think about this. Could you imagine if everyone was the same and thought the same? Dear God, that's horrible. I can't even imagine that. And let's say it's not exactly the same, but let's say it's relatively everyone is pretty much has the same viewpoints with some variation. Let's say everyone was conservative. Well, that wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be great. Let's say everyone was liberal. That wouldn't be great. It's nice having a mix. It's nice having conservatives, liberals, moderates, independents, people that are apolitical, it's nice. It's very nice. And I think we have to get back to that point of being civil.